Millionaire CEO had no idea he had a daughter until a humble mother brought her to a job interview. Before we dive into today's story, tell us in the comments, where are you watching from? We love seeing how far these stories travel. Let's begin. The boardroom was silent until it wasn't. 12 executives sat around a gleaming obsidian table beneath a chandelier that cost more than most cars. The air shimmered with tension, the kind that clung to skin like static. Camilla Ross sat at the far end, her hands clasped tightly on her lap, her resume crisp, her nerves ragged. She was answering a question about brand repositioning for legacy clients when the door creaked open behind her. Soft footsteps padded across the marble floor. Then came the voice. "Daddy!" It was small, sweet, the kind of voice that made strangers on a bus smile without meaning to. Camilla froze. Her blood turned to ice. Across from her, Julian Hart, CEO of Whitestone Enterprises, luxury branding tycoon, king of this polished kingdom, blinked once. Then again. His hand, which had been curled around a sleek black mug, jerked. Coffee spilled across his notepad and dripped onto the table. No one moved, no one breathed. Camilla turned, heart thundering in her ears. Lily stood there, her 6-year-old daughter, clutching her unicorn pencil case. Her dark curls pulled into uneven pigtails. Her eyes, those warm caramel eyes, locked on Julian like she'd just solved a puzzle. Camilla's mouth opened, but no sound came out. "Lily," she whispered finally. "Sweetheart, what are you doing? You were supposed to wait with Miss Angela." "I was done coloring," Lily said simply, walking a little closer, and then I saw him. "That's the man from the picture box." Camilla's heart stopped. The room murmured. Executives glanced at each other. Someone coughed. Another awkwardly shifted their chair. Julian stared at the child. His face, a fortress of corporate stoicism, had begun to crack. Just a flicker, but it was there. "I'm sorry," Camilla blurted. She stood quickly, gently taking Lily's hand. "She's confused. We should go. I'm so sorry." But Lily tugged against her hand and looked back at Julian. "Are you my daddy?" The words fell like a bomb. No one knew what to say. Not even Julian. His fingers had stilled. His jaw tightened, then relaxed, then tightened again. There was a look in his eyes, disbelief, confusion. Something Camilla hadn't seen since college vulnerability. "Ms. Ross," said one of the board members, clearing his throat awkwardly, "perhaps we can reschedule this interview." Camilla nodded quickly, her throat too tight to speak. Julian finally spoke. "Wait." Everyone turned. He looked at Lily again, then at Camilla. And for the first time in 10 years, his voice softened. "I've seen her before." Camilla's breath caught. And just like that, the room broke. Chairs scraped back. Phones buzzed. One executive murmured into his smartwatch. The illusion of structure collapsed, replaced by stunned whispers and questions no one dared voice aloud. Camilla scooped Lily into her arms and all but fled the room. Behind her, Julian sat motionless. His fingers slowly curled into a fist as if he were gripping something invisible, fragile, important, and already slipping through his hands. 12 hours earlier, Brooklyn. 6:07 a.m. The sky was still bruised with dawn when Camilla Ross's alarm chirped on her nightstand. She jolted awake, one hand instinctively reaching across the bed for her daughter, Lily. A muffled giggle came from under the covers at her feet. Camilla sighed with relief. Another morning, another hidden fort made from a quilt and a flashlight. "Come on, silly goose," she said gently, tugging the covers away. "Big day today." Lily stretched, yawned, and immediately began telling Camilla a dream about a flying dog that could sing opera. Camilla nodded along as she pulled her hair into a messy bun. She didn't have time to think too much. There were outfits to iron, oatmeal to make, and a portfolio to triple check. Because today wasn't just a job interview. Today was the interview Whitestone Enterprises. One of the few places that might see her as more than a gap mom or single applicant with an inconsistent resume. Today could change everything, or break her, again. Her phone buzzed. A text lit up from Sonia, the babysitter. "Cam, I'm so sorry. My son's sick. I can't come today. Hope you understand." Camilla stared at the screen. No, she whispered. She looked at Lily, who was now humming to herself while drawing on a cereal box. There was no plan B. She picked up the Whitestone email again. 10:00 a.m., Midtown, floor 28. Camilla glanced at the clock, then at Lily. She grabbed Lily's backpack, stuffed it with colored pencils and sticker books, and whispered a quiet prayer. "Guess you're coming to work with me, Peanut." The silence in the boardroom had become unbearable. Julian Hart's eyes stayed locked on the little girl. She couldn't have stood more than 3.5 feet tall, but her presence loomed larger than any quarterly report or hostile takeover he'd ever faced. There was something in her face, something disarming, familiar, yet impossible. Camilla gripped Lily's hand harder than she meant to. She could feel her heart rattling inside her chest like a panicked bird. She was sure someone could hear it. Or maybe everyone was too stunned by what had just happened. "Lily, honey," she said, keeping her voice calm for her daughter's sake. "Come here. We need to step outside." But Lily didn't move. She was still staring up at Julian with her wide, searching eyes like she was waiting for him to remember something. Or someone. "You really do look like her," Julian murmured suddenly, mostly to himself. Camilla's breath caught. "Excuse me?" one of the board members asked, confused. Julian blinked like he'd only just realized he'd spoken out loud. He stood up slowly, his tailored navy suit moving in quiet folds as he approached the child. He wasn't sure what he was doing. His body was ahead of his brain. He stopped a few feet away and crouched down to her level. "What's your name?" he asked gently. "Lily," she said without hesitation. "Lily Ross." "Lily," he echoed, tasting the name. That same name had once been scrawled in a margin of Camilla's notebook next to a doodle of baby names. He hadn't seen it in years, but he remembered. He remembered that notebook. He remembered the smile she had when she talked about maybe having a little girl someday, and how he'd teased her, calling her a planner with a wild heart. Camilla's voice broke the moment. She doesn't understand what she's saying. She saw a photo, that's all. A really old one. It's nothing, just confusion. "Please, I'm sorry, we'll go now." Julian turned his eyes to her, and for the first time since she walked into that boardroom, their gazes held. Camilla had changed. Her hair was shorter, her clothes more modest, her eyes shadowed with years of fatigue, but the strength, that stubborn, unshakable fire that was still there. He used to love that about her. "Ms. Ross," he said carefully, his voice colder now as he straightened, "do you make a habit of bringing your child to executive interviews?" A sting she didn't hide. "No. My babysitter canceled last minute. I didn't want to miss this opportunity." "Well, you've certainly made an impression." The board members chuckled awkwardly, unsure whether it was meant as a joke. Camilla's cheeks burned. "We'll go," she repeated. "I never meant to cause a scene." But Lily clutched her again, this time more tightly. Camilla turned away from the room, walking quickly, boots clicking against the pristine marble. As she passed Julian, she didn't dare look at him again. But he looked at her, and then at Lily. His mind was spinning, rewinding a decade, digging through foggy memories of laughter library steps, and Camilla in his old hoodie, her hair tucked into a messy bun as she balanced a marketing textbook on her lap. He hadn't seen her in 10 years, and now she had a daughter who called him Daddy. The boardroom was buzzing now, executives whispering, checking social media, eyeing Julian for a reaction. But he didn't speak. Instead, he walked to the edge of the table, picked up the fallen coffee mug, and turned it slowly in his hands like it might offer answers. Then he glanced toward the door Camilla had just disappeared through. Angela Nguyen, his assistant, leaned close and whispered, "Would you like me to cancel the rest of the interviews?" Julian didn't answer right away. He just whispered one word. "Lily." Brooklyn, New York. 12 hours earlier. The alarm buzzed like a dying insect beside the bed. Camilla Ross groaned, swatting it into silence. Her eyes opened to the soft gray light of morning filtering through blinds that never quite closed properly. Outside, the city groaned to life, with sirens honking cars and the distant hiss of a bus braking at the curb. Another day, another chance to climb uphill. She rolled over and instinctively reached to the other side of the bed, empty as always. But her fingers brushed a warm tangle of curls instead. A giggle bubbled up from under the blanket. "Mommy." "I'm a burrito," said a small, triumphant voice. Camilla smiled and peeled back the covers to reveal Lily wrapped from chin to toes in the comforter like a burrito with legs. A purple unicorn plushie peeked out beside her. "You're supposed to be in your own bed," Camilla said, leaning in to kiss her forehead. Lily grinned. "Unicorns like sleepovers." "Well, this unicorn's human needs to get dressed for a really big day," Camilla said, swinging her legs over the edge of the mattress. She stretched, bones cracking from another night of too little sleep. The worn apartment was still, but the air hummed with nerves. Today was the day. After months of rejection emails and half-hearted phone calls, she finally had a real interview. And not just anywhere, Whitestone Enterprises, a name whispered like royalty in marketing circles. If she got this job, it wouldn't just mean income, it would mean validation. It would mean she wasn't just a dropout statistic or a mom applicant or whatever quietly judged label people gave her when they noticed the gap in her resume. It would mean she was Camilla Ross again, the strategist, the innovator, the once top of her class rising star before life knocked the air out of her lungs. "Do you have butterflies in your tummy?" Lily asked from the bed. Camilla paused. "Maybe a few." "I have one too," Lily said seriously. "But it's okay. Butterflies mean something good is coming." Camilla reached for her coffee-stained laptop bag and smiled. "Then let's hope we get a whole garden." The apartment was too small for nerves. While oatmeal bubbled on the stove, Camilla pressed her one good blouse under a tea towel with a flat iron. She twisted her hair into a low bun and put on the lipstick Lily always said made her look extra strong. Lily was already dressed in her favorite overalls, sitting cross-legged on the floor, organizing her colored pencils by shade. She had packed her quiet things, bag herself, coloring book stickers, and a deck of Disney trivia cards she fully intended to quiz someone with. "Did you remember your lucky necklace?" Lily asked, as Camilla reached for her heels. Camilla hesitated. The tiny gold charm sat on her dresser just beside the old photograph Lily had discovered 2 weeks ago, a faded Polaroid of Camilla and a college-aged man on a campus bench. Her hair was windblown and he was laughing, arm-looped around her shoulders. Lily had studied that photo with silent intensity and finally whispered, "Is this my puzzle?" Daddy Camilla had told her what she always did. "That's just someone I used to know." But Lily had tucked the photo into her sketchbook anyway. Camilla slipped the necklace over her head and took a deep breath. Everything would go right today. It had to. That was the plan. Until 8:13 a.m. when her phone buzzed. She wiped her hands on a towel and checked the screen. "Sonia, one new message, Cam. I'm so sorry. Noah woke up with a fever. I can't make it today. Hope you understand." Camilla's stomach dropped. She stared at the message, blinking hard. No babysitter, no backup, no one to call. She looked at Lily, who was humming to herself and drawing a cat with 3 tails. "You cannot miss this interview." Camilla paced the tiny kitchen twice. Checked the clock, 8:17. Interview was at 10:00. Midtown. 45 minutes on the queue line. Barely enough time. Her eyes darted to Lily again. No choice. She grabbed Lily's backpack, stuffed in every sticker book and snack pouch she could find, and crouched in front of her. "Sweetheart," she said, forcing calm into her voice, "I need you to come with me today." "To your interview." Lily's eyes widened. "Just to sit in the lobby and draw." "That's all. You'll have your own chair and everything." "Will there be donuts?" Camilla laughed, relieved. "There will definitely be donuts. After." Lily zipped her jacket and threw her arms around Camilla's waist. "You're going to get the job. I know it." Camilla blinked away the sudden sting behind her eyes. "Thanks, Peanut." By 9:04 a.m., they were rushing down the subway stairs hand in hand, hair catching in the cold spring wind. And somewhere quietly tucked into Lily's backpack, the photo still waited its secret, ready to change everything. By the time the subway lurched into motion beneath the Brooklyn streets, Camilla was already halfway through, rehearsing her opening pitch in her head. "I believe brand stories should make people feel seen." She mouthed the words silently, her fingers tightening around the strap of her bag as the train groaned into the tunnel. Lily sat beside her, swinging her legs, headphones too big for her ears clamped over her curls, nodding to some imaginary rhythm. A few passengers offered curious glances, child with a sketchpad mother in secondhand business wear. Quiet tension pressed between them like glass. Camilla didn't care. She was trying not to sweat through her blouse. The nerves weren't new. She'd learned to operate with a baseline of anxiety ever since her scholarship was revoked, since the letters stopped coming, since she found herself holding a positive test alone in a dorm bathroom and choosing to walk out the front door with her head high, not her shame. But today was different. Today was a second chance, and second chances didn't come twice. She stole a glance at Lily. Her daughter was quietly coloring on her lap, humming as she shaded the sky purple. "Why purple?" Camilla asked gently. "Because it's a magic sky," Lily said without looking up. "Where big things happen." Camilla smiled despite herself, like what Lily shrugged, like people finding what they lost. Camilla blinked. It was just a child's musing, but something about the words clung to her ribs like frost. She tucked a loose curl behind Lily's ear and leaned her head against the subway window. The train jolted again. Announcements buzzed overhead. Her stop was coming soon. She exhaled slowly and began counting her breaths. 1, 2, 3. You've got this. She thought of the people who'd told her no, of the men who looked at her belly before her resume, of the friends who had stopped calling when it was clear she wouldn't be graduating with them. And then she thought of her daughter. The first time Lily kicked, the first time she smiled, her first crayon drawing taped proudly to the refrigerator with a magnet shaped like a star. Camilla had lost a lot, but she'd never lost Lily, and that made everything worth the fall. The train slowed. 42nd Street, Bryant Park. She stood smoothing her skirt. "Come on, love. Let's show them what we're made of." Lily hopped off the seat with a determined bounce. As they surfaced onto the street, Camilla felt the first lick of wind through her blazer. The towering buildings loomed ahead, bright and polished, casting long shadows over the people below. Whitestone Enterprises stood like a monolith of chrome and pride, its entrance framed by twin marble lions and a lobby glowing like an art gallery. Camilla paused just outside the revolving door. "You ready?" she asked Lily. Lily nodded. "Always." Together they stepped inside, past the marble, past the doubt, and, unknowingly, toward a moment that would change 3 lives forever. The lobby of Whitestone Enterprises gleamed like a jewelry box, glass chrome and quiet perfection. A cascading sculpture of steel leaves rotated slowly above the reception desk, catching shards of morning light. Camilla tried not to stare too long. Everything here whispered wealth order and sharp judgment. She adjusted the collar of her blouse, willing her heartbeat to settle. Her heels clicked softly against the marble as she approached the front desk, one hand on Lily's shoulder. The receptionist looked up, young, polished, and already annoyed. "Can I help you?" "Yes," Camilla said, voice steadier than she felt. "Camilla Ross. I'm here for the 10 a.m. interview, marketing strategist position." The receptionist tapped a few keys, scanning the screen. Her eyes flicked down to Lily and then back up with a trained, blank expression. There was no indication of a guest. "She won't be in the meeting," Camilla said quickly. "Just here in the lobby. She has books and crayons. She'll sit quietly, I promise." The receptionist hesitated. Her expression hovered between protocol and discomfort. Camilla's stomach clenched. One word could collapse everything. But then a voice cut in from the far side of the lobby. "She's fine." Angela Nguyen stepped forward in her sharp black heels, a clipboard in one hand, her expression unreadable. "This way, Ms. Ross. Mr. Hart is waiting." Camilla gave a slight bow of thanks and turned to Lily. "Stay right here, okay? You can sit in this chair and color. I'll be just down the hall." Lily nodded solemnly and opened her sketchpad. As Camilla followed Angela toward the glass elevator, she felt like she was walking into a lion's den in borrowed armor. Angela didn't make small talk. She led the way in silence, swiping her badge and stepping into the executive wing where everything smelled faintly of citrus and expensive ink. They stopped in front of a tall door with frosted panels. Angela turned to her. "You have exactly 30 minutes. Mr. Hart doesn't like small talk. He'll ask about your resume gap." "Be ready." "I am," Camilla said quietly. Angela opened the door. "Good luck." The room was all angles and elegance. A wall of windows looked out over Manhattan, a view so vast it made Camilla's breath hitch. A sleek table stretched down the center, and at the far end, standing with his back to her, was Julian Hart. He turned as the door closed behind her. Camilla forgot how to breathe. He looked exactly the same and nothing like she remembered. Taller somehow, sharper. The boy she knew had grown into a man with sculpted features and cold calculation in his eyes. He wore a charcoal suit like armor. No trace of the student who once kissed her under a library archway. Julian gave her a short nod. "Ms. Ross." "Mr. Hart," she replied, voice dry. He didn't recognize her. That was obvious. She wasn't surprised, but it still stung. "Let's begin," he said, sitting at the head of the table. Camilla took the chair across from him and passed her portfolio forward. "I've included campaign samples from my freelance work, as well as my rebranding project for Haven Cafe." He skimmed the pages without expression. "There's a 6-year employment gap." "Yes," she said evenly. "I stepped away from corporate work to raise my daughter, but I continued freelance branding work in the meantime, small businesses, nonprofits." He studied her. "And now you're ready to jump back in." "I never really left," she said. "I just shifted the battlefield." Julian raised an eyebrow. "Interesting metaphor." Camilla shrugged lightly. "Marketing is war with softer weapons." A flicker of amusement touched his mouth but vanished before it became a smile. He flipped to the next page. Haven Cafe increased its customer base by 30% in 6 months. "Yes. I worked with the owner on customer mapping, social tone, and an identity shift focused on community storytelling." Julian didn't look up. "You wrote the campaign slogan, 'Come home to your favorite cup.'" "Yes." He tapped the page twice. "It's good." The compliment, brief and impersonal, still filled her with a surprising heat of pride. But before she could respond, the door clicked open behind them. Camilla turned. Lily. Somehow she had slipped past the receptionist and Angela. Her little sneakers squeaked on the polished floor. Julian stood abruptly. "Who?" Lily, Camilla said, rushing to her feet. "What are you doing? You can't just—" But Lily wasn't listening. She had stopped in the middle of the room, staring at Julian. Her small face was suddenly still. "That's the man," she whispered. "That's the man from the picture box." Julian frowned. "What are you talking about?" Camilla's heart stopped. And then Lily took a hesitant step forward, looking up at him with eyes so wide, so certain it made the room feel unbearably small. "Are you my daddy? Are you my daddy?" The words floated into the air like a dropped glass, beautiful and fragile and already shattering everything around them. Julian stared at the girl. He had faced billion-dollar acquisitions, press ambushes, lawsuits, competitors trying to crush his name. None of them had rattled him like this tiny voice had. The child before him was standing still, her face hopeful, expectant. His body tensed as if she were a threat. But all she had done was look at him with eyes that felt familiar, too familiar. I'm sorry," he said, slowly glancing over at Camilla, whose face had gone sheet white. Camilla rushed forward, crouching beside Lily, her voice tight with panic. "Sweetheart, no. He's not who you think." "But he is," Lily said, her brow furrowed. "He looks just like the picture." Julian's pulse thudded in his ears. "What picture?" Camilla stood, her voice brittle and trembling. "It's nothing. An old photo from college. Lily found it a few weeks ago in a storage box. She doesn't understand. Show me the photo." The demand in his voice cut through the air like a scalpel. Camilla hesitated. She didn't have it on her. It was still tucked inside Lily's sketchbook. But the damage was already done. Lily believed what she believed, and now Julian was staring at her like a courtroom judge waiting for her to testify. "I didn't plan this," she said, meeting his gaze. "I didn't even know you'd be here today." Julian's jaw tightened. "Convenient timing, then." "Don't do that," she snapped. "Don't make this uglier than it already is." Lily looked between them, her bottom lip trembling. "Did I do something bad that broke Camilla completely?" "No, baby." She dropped to her knees again and pulled Lily close, wrapping her arms tightly around her. "You did nothing wrong. Nothing." Julian stepped back, his face unreadable. For a long, stretching moment, the room was silent, but for Lily's small breaths and Camilla's trembling shoulders. Finally, Julian turned to Angela, who had appeared silently in the doorway at some point. "Get security to clear the hall," he said flatly, "and contact Whitestone's legal team. I want a private conversation with Ms. Ross immediately." Angela blinked but nodded, disappearing again, without a word. Camilla stood slowly still, holding Lily's hand. Julian crossed the room, stopping just a foot in front of them. "I want a DNA test," he said, his voice low and cold. "Today," Camilla's heart pounded. "You don't get to come storming into her life demanding things." "She stormed into mine," he said, voice clipped, "calling me daddy in a room full of my board." Camilla's fists clenched. "She's 6. She doesn't know I know what I saw." He interrupted. His gaze flicked to Lily. "And if she's mine, I will know for sure." Lily tugged on Camilla's sleeve. "Mommy." "What's happening?" Camilla crouched again and touched her forehead to Lily's. "Something I should have prepared you for," she whispered. "I'm sorry." When she stood again, her voice was calm, if hollow. "Fine. Do your test." Julian's penthouse office sat like a crown above midtown floor-to-ceiling windows that looked out over the jagged skyline, casting sharp angles of morning light across the sleek furniture. But right now, the view was irrelevant. Camilla sat stiff-backed on the edge of a leather chair, Lily beside her on a smaller sofa, her hands folded in her lap as if sensing the gravity in the room. Julian stood by the window, arms crossed, his entire body coiled with disbelief. No one had spoken in almost 3 minutes. The silence felt like judgment. Finally, Julian turned. "She looks like me." It wasn't a question. Camilla didn't answer immediately. Her throat was too dry. She looked over at Lily, who was humming quietly to herself, now focused on her sticker book, completely unaware of the storm she had set in motion. "Yes," Camilla said finally. "She does." Julian's jaw twitched. "How old is she?" "6. She turned 6 in January." His breath caught, but he didn't let it show. He walked to his desk and picked up a framed photo, one of him in a tuxedo standing beside his mother at an awards gala. 6, he repeated. "Which would make the pregnancy?" "Spring semester of senior year," Camilla said softly. Julian slowly set the frame down as though afraid it might break. "And you never thought to tell me I tried," Camilla said, her voice hardening with restrained fire. "I called. I wrote. I left messages. I even came to your apartment once, and someone told me you had transferred to London. No forwarding information. Just gone." He blinked slowly. "I don't remember any of that." "You wouldn't," she said. "Your mother made sure of it." The name landed between them like a warning bell. Julian's shoulders stiffened. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying," Margaret Hart intercepted everything Camilla said. "I saw her. The day I showed up at your building, she was there. She told me you didn't want anything to do with me anymore, that your future couldn't afford distractions." Julian was quiet. Camilla leaned forward, now trembling. "You think I wanted to raise Lily alone? That I chose to live in a one-bedroom walk-up, patching together freelance gigs and hand-me-downs? You think I wanted to explain to my daughter why she didn't have a father?" Her voice broke. "I begged the universe for a different answer. I begged you too. You just never heard me." Julian looked shaken now. His carefully curated detachment was beginning to crumble, hairline fractures forming behind his eyes. He turned to Lily again, and this time he really looked at her. She was giggling quietly now, sticking smiley face stickers onto a corner of the glass coffee table. "I want a DNA test," he said, but his voice had lost its edge. It came out quiet, uncertain. Camilla stood. "Fine, do it. But not because I need to prove anything. Because you need to face the truth you never knew you lost." Julian looked up at her. And in that single glance past the distance, the heartbreak, the years he couldn't remember missing, he saw it. Not a trap, not a lie. Just grief. And the woman who had carried it all alone. Later that afternoon, the clinic waiting room was too bright, too clean, too quiet. Lily sat in the corner sipping apple juice from a paper cup, legs swinging beneath the vinyl seat. A nurse had just swabbed her cheek, gentle and smiling. Now it was Julian's turn. He didn't flinch as the nurse collected the sample, but something in his hands betrayed him, his fingers clenched tightly white at the knuckles. Camilla stood by the door watching every move, arms crossed. The nurse smiled. "We'll have results back within 48 hours. Julian nodded stiffly. Camilla picked up Lily's backpack. "We'll be going now." Julian hesitated. "May I see her again?" Before then, Camilla hesitated. She looked down at Lily, who looked up at Julian and gave a small wave. "I'll think about it," Camilla said. And with that she walked out, Lily's hand tucked safely in hers. Julian stood frozen. He had come into the day thinking he would hire a strategist. Instead, he had found the daughter he never knew he had, and the woman he once loved who had carried his absence like a stone in her chest. Julian sat behind his desk long after the door closed, after Camilla and Lily's footsteps faded down the hall. His hands rested on the arms of his chair, unmoving. His pulse, though, was erratic, more alive than it had been in years. 6 years. He turned his head slightly and stared at the corner of the glass coffee table. 2 smiley face stickers still clung to it, stuck there by the small, chubby fingers of a girl who might now almost certainly be his daughter. Lily. He whispered the name aloud. It felt foreign in his mouth, and yet it carried weight as though it had always belonged there. The sticker faces beamed back at him. He rose slowly and crossed to the window, arms folded tight across his chest. The city moved below him, bustling and indifferent. But inside, his world had narrowed to a single truth he couldn't ignore. He might have missed her first step, her first word, her first everything. And for what board meetings? Market expansion. Gaining the trust of investors who never loved him the way she had once loved him, who only saw a heart, never Julian. He closed his eyes, and suddenly it came rushing back. Camilla barefoot in his apartment kitchen, stirring ramen while reciting ad copy from a textbook. Her laugh when he tried and failed to help with a group project. Her eyes furious and shining when she found out Margaret had threatened her with consequences if she didn't walk away quietly. He hadn't believed her back then. Not fully. Margaret had claimed Camilla was unstable, needy, manipulative. But the look in Camilla's eyes this morning wasn't manipulation. It was pain. Cold and clear. And it was deserved. Meanwhile, in a cab across Manhattan, Camilla stared out the window, her jaw set tight as buildings blurred past. Lily was beside her, humming tracing letters on the fogged glass. Mommy Lily said suddenly, "Why was he so surprised?" Camilla blinked. Who, the man from the picture box? Julian. Camilla swallowed hard. "Because he didn't know you thought he was your dad." "But he is, isn't he?" Lily asked. "I mean, he looks like me." Camilla felt the breath catch in her throat. "We don't know yet. But you looked at him like you remembered him," Lily said quietly. "And he looked at you like you were a really old song." Camilla closed her eyes. Out of the mouths of children. She turned and kissed Lily's forehead. "I promise I'll tell you everything. Just not all at once. It's a big story." Lily nodded. "Okay." There was a pause. "Then will he come back?" Camilla's throat ached. "I don't know," she said softly. "But if he does, we'll be ready. Together." She reached into Lily's backpack to pull out her sketchpad and paused. Tucked between the pages was the photo again. The one from college. Camilla and Julian, so young and foolish and free, grinning in spring sunlight. She almost put it away. But instead, she slid it into her purse. Maybe it was time she stopped hiding the past. Especially now that it was knocking on her door again with gray suits, DNA tests, and eyes that still made her heart falter after all these years. 7 years earlier, Cambridge, Massachusetts, early spring. The courtyard behind the business school library smelled like daffodils and coffee. Students in fleece jackets and windbreakers lounged on steps or leaned against stone pillars, cramming for finals with earbuds and energy drinks. Julian Hart sat at a weathered picnic table, his sleeves rolled to the elbows, a fountain pen twirling between his fingers. He wasn't reading the finance article in front of him. He was watching her. Camilla Ross. She had earbuds in one knee, bouncing her laptop, surrounded by color-coded sticky notes and a half-eaten granola bar. Her eyes narrowed as she typed, lip caught lightly between her teeth. "Multitasking genius," he said, finally breaking the silence. Camilla glanced up, one brow arched. That's supposed to be a compliment or an observation. Both Julian grinned. She smirked and turned the laptop slightly. "I'm fine-tuning our pitch, unless you'd rather deliver a half-baked strategy tomorrow." Julian leaned closer. "The only thing half-baked is the granola bar you've been chewing for an hour." She laughed, that easy open laugh that had first caught him off guard during sophomore year. "You're stalling," she said. "Maybe. Or maybe I'm just admiring my partner in crime." She shook her head, pretending to be annoyed, but her cheeks were flushed. They weren't supposed to fall in love. Camilla was the brilliant scholarship student who worked 2 part-time jobs and still beat half the class on every marketing case. Julian was the heir to the Hartwell dynasty, whose mother had already mapped out his corporate path from cradle to boardroom. But there was something about her that unraveled him. And something about him when he was soft, when he forgot the weight of expectation that made her believe maybe, just maybe, they could exist outside the labels. For a while they did. Study sessions turned into shared dinners. Late-night brainstorming morphed into whispered dreams in bed. He told her about the pressure, about his mother, about how success sometimes felt like a script he didn't write but was being forced to perform. And she told him about growing up in Queens with her grandmother, about watching her mom pack pills in silence, about wanting to create campaigns that didn't sell products but stories, truths that made people feel something again. They talked about the future, about maybe working together, her as the creative, him as the strategist. Camilla used to call it their boardroom rebellion. But the rebellion didn't last. It ended on a Thursday afternoon. The sky was gray. Camilla had just handed in her final campaign draft when she received a text, "Stop by my building. I have a surprise." Jay. But when she buzzed his apartment, it wasn't Julian who answered. It was Margaret Hart, elegant, immaculate, and ice-cold. "You must be Camilla." Her voice was silk and steel. "Julian's been transferred. London, effective immediately." Camilla blinked. Transferred. He didn't say. Margaret stepped into the hall and shut the door behind her. "I'm going to be direct. You're a distraction. And Julian cannot afford distractions, not now, not ever. His future has already been arranged. Do not contact him again." "I don't believe you," Camilla whispered. Margaret's smile didn't reach her eyes. "That's unfortunate." Then she turned, walked back inside, and left Camilla standing in the hall with a heart cracking open. Camilla tried. She texted, called, wrote emails, even mailed a letter. Nothing. When she finally visited the administrative office, they told her Julian had withdrawn from his final semester and relocated. They had no forwarding address, no answers. And then, a few weeks later, 2 pink lines. Camilla sat on the bathroom floor, hands shaking. No job, no degree, no partner, just the echo of a love buried in silence. She made a choice, to carry that love forward, alone. Present day. Camilla stood in her kitchen wiping the counter as Lily finished her peanut butter sandwich. Outside the window, the Brooklyn wind was howling. Inside, her heart was quieter, but no less full. She looked at her daughter, Julian's eyes, her own stubborn jaw. She remembered every minute of that year alone, the work, the fear. The moment she felt Lily kick for the first time and whispered, "I've got you," a love buried, but never dead. Now it was rising again, but whether it was rebirth or disaster that she didn't yet know. Camilla never forgot the way Margaret Hart closed that door. It wasn't a slam. It wasn't dramatic. It was quiet, final. And it echoed in her memory like a judge's gavel. She stood in that hallway for a full minute, staring at the grain of the polished wood, her heart pounding in her ears. Her hands itched to knock again, to scream, to call out Julian's name just once more. But her legs wouldn't move. She felt like she'd just been erased. The next morning, she went to the campus library and opened their last group project, the marketing case they were meant to present together. His half of the file was still blank. No edits, no updates. She texted again. "Still haven't heard from you. Did something happen?" Call me, please. Read 8:04 a.m. No reply. She called. Straight to voicemail. By the third day, the read receipts disappeared altogether. In the following weeks, she scoured social media for signs of him. But Julian had never been active online, not in the real sense. His profiles were empty placeholders, curated by image consultants. He didn't exist where normal people lived. When she finally worked up the courage to visit his apartment again, the concierge told her Julian had moved out rather suddenly. No forwarding address. It made no sense. He had just told her 2 nights before that awful hallway scene that he loved her, that he wanted to take her to Paris after graduation, that she made him feel like someone he chose to be, not someone he had to become. And now, gone. Just gone. The pregnancy test came 2 weeks later. Camilla stared at it for a long time. Then she took another. And another. 3 pink lines. No doubt. She went to the small campus health center, her hands trembling so violently that she dropped the clipboard twice. When the nurse asked if she wanted to schedule a termination, Camilla shook her head. No. I need time. But the truth was, even then, she'd already made her decision. She wasn't going to erase this child. She wasn't going to bury what remained of her and Julian. This wasn't a scandal or a mistake. It was a life, a spark. She would protect it, even if she had to protect it alone. 6 months later, Camilla gave birth in a public hospital in Queens, her mother on one side, a nursing student on the other. There was no silver cradle, no designer bassinet, no father beaming behind glass. Just her. And the moment she held Lily for the first time, soft and squirming and impossibly small, Camilla felt something settle in her chest that she hadn't felt in months. Peace. Not because things were easy, but because they were hers. Now Camilla placed a hand on her living room wall where a tiny gallery of Lily's drawings curled slightly at the corners. Crayon suns, lopsided cats, stick figure portraits with hearts around them. She looked at one in particular, a drawing of 3 people holding hands beneath a rainbow. Me, Mommy, and a tall man labeled Puzzle Daddy. Camilla stared at it. Then slowly she peeled it off the wall and placed it in her purse next to the photo she had once tried so hard to forget. The past was stirring, and it wasn't finished with her yet. The envelope sat on Julian's desk like a loaded weapon, unopened, heavy. The edges were creased from where he'd turned it over and over, his fingers betraying the hesitation he couldn't admit. Across the front, his name was printed in clean, clinical font, Julian Hart, Confidential. Angela Nguyen stood a few feet away, silent as ever. "You've had it for 2 hours," she finally said. Julian didn't look at her. He was standing by the window again, arms crossed, gaze fixed on nothing. "I know." She shifted her weight. "If you don't want to know, I do. Then open it." Julian exhaled through his nose and returned to his desk. Slowly, deliberately, he picked up a letter opener and sliced the seal. The paper inside was crisp, unemotional. Just numbers, percentages, a confirmation of biology. But the words might as well have been etched in stone. Probability of paternity 99.98%. For a long moment, he just stared at the number. Then his fingers curled around the edge of the paper, and his whole body deflated. Angela stepped forward, her voice quiet. "Do you want me to call Ms. Ross?" Julian shook his head. "I'll do it. Later." That evening, Camilla answered on the 3rd ring. Her voice was cautious. "Hello," Julian's voice came through, low, steady. "It's me." She didn't respond right away. She waited. "I got the results." A pause. And there was a breath on the other end, like he was gathering every fractured part of himself before speaking. "She's mine." Camilla closed her eyes. Not because she was surprised. She had known. From the moment Lily had been born. From the way the child's eyes mirrored his so precisely it sometimes took her breath away. But hearing him say it, finally, was something else. "I see," she said softly. "I'd like to talk," Julian added, face to face, no lawyers, no assistants. Camilla hesitated. "We're not a business deal." "I know. That's why I want to do it right." Her mind was already racing, protective, skeptical. But beneath it, a tiny part of her heart flickered with something else. Hope, regret. She didn't know. I'll think about it. She hung up before he could say more. That night, Julian didn't sleep. He sat alone in his penthouse, the envelope still on the table beside him, his tie-loosened collar open. He'd spent his life climbing, winning, building a world where he could never be hurt the way his father had been hurt, by failure, by chaos, by love that was conditional. And yet, here he was, shattered by a 6-year-old girl with sticker books and eyes that saw through him in a single look. He remembered the drawing Camilla had passed him before leaving the clinic. Just a simple crayon sketch Lily had done in the waiting room. 3 figures, 1 tall, 2 small, all holding hands beneath a yellow sun. He hadn't understood it then. Now he couldn't stop seeing it. Not a fantasy. A wish. The next morning, a park bench in Prospect Heights. Camilla sat with a scarf wrapped around her neck, Lily perched beside her eating a muffin, swinging her legs. Julian approached quietly, hands in his coat pockets. He looked tired and for once not polished, just real. Lily saw him first. "Hi," she said, her smile cautious but open. "Hi, Lily." Julian's voice cracked slightly. He sat a careful distance away, looking between them. "I wanted to say thank you," he told Camilla, "for being her mother, for being strong, when I wasn't even aware of what you were carrying." Camilla said nothing at first. She was watching him closely, waiting for the performance, the PR-trained CEO tone. But it didn't come. Instead, he pulled something from his coat pocket, a small tin box scratched with age. "I kept this," he said, holding it out. "From college. You gave it to me during finals. Remember?" Camilla blinked. It was the mint tin she'd given him as a joke, a tiny survival kit for exams. Inside had been chocolate, a mini pencil, a quote from Maya Angelou, and a folded paper star she'd made during a 2 a.m. study session. "You still have that?" she asked, stunned. Julian nodded. "I don't remember everything about that time, but I remember that." He looked at Lily now more directly. "If you'll let me," he said softly. "I want to be part of her life." Camilla swallowed hard. Lily looked up. "Does that mean I can call you Daddy now?" Julian's eyes shined. "Only if you want to." Lily grinned. "I do." Camilla's heart clenched, not from fear, but from something dangerously close to forgiveness. Julian sat alone in his penthouse. After the call ended, the city stretching out below like a glittering lie. He had everything, and somehow he had nothing. The walls of his apartment were cold, too quiet. His tailored life one where meetings were scheduled to the minute and emotions were managed like PR disasters felt foreign now. The envelope still lay on the table in front of him, torn open, but never discarded, as though throwing it away would also erase the realization that had gutted him. He had a daughter who had learned to spell without him, a daughter who had probably asked why she didn't have a dad, and Camilla, brave and alone, had to answer with soft lies. Julian's hands shook as he picked up Lily's drawing again. He smoothed the crinkled page and stared at the 3 stick figures, 1 taller, 2 small, all holding hands beneath a crooked sun. He touched the little hand-drawn heart beside the word family. He'd spent his whole life building a company that shaped public image, molded identity into marketable elegance. And yet here was the truest branding he'd ever seen, made with a pink crayon by someone who had no idea what a shareholder was. Just Daddy. That word had hit him like a blade, because it wasn't just biology. It was belonging. Meanwhile, in Camilla's apartment, Camilla paced her living room, arms crossed over her chest, biting the inside of her cheek. She had ended the call with the clinical calm she'd perfected over years of interviews, rent negotiations, and disappointing doctor's appointments. But now, with the silence thick around her, she felt the tension rising through her ribs like steam. He said it. He acknowledged it. And still it wasn't enough. Knowing he was Lily's father biologically didn't erase 6 years of absence. Didn't erase diapers she changed in the dark preschool meetings she attended alone, the scraped knees she kissed without another adult to lean on. But it meant something. It meant they were here now. At the beginning of something. Mommy Lily's voice came soft from the couch. Camilla turned. Her daughter was holding the folded-up drawing again, the same one she'd shown her earlier, her wish family. "Do you think he liked it?" Camilla sat beside her. "I think he loved it." Lily smiled, looking relieved. Then, after a pause, "Do you think he'll come back?" Camilla tucked a strand of hair behind Lily's ear. "I think he's trying." Lily nodded, satisfied for now, but Camilla wasn't sure if her own heart believed it yet. The next morning, Julian arrived at the park earlier than he had to. He sat on a cold bench, palms pressed together, trying not to rehearse. He had nothing scripted, no slides, no polished pitch. When he saw them, Camilla in a long coat, Lily skipping slightly beside her, his breath hitched. Lily ran ahead. "Hi," she chirped. "I brought you something." Julian stood unsure what to do with his hands. "You did." She reached into her backpack and pulled out a crumpled napkin. On it she had drawn another picture, the same stick family, but this time they were inside a house. A heart floated over the roof. Julian took it like it was made of glass. "Is this your house?" he asked gently. Lily beamed. "No. Our house. Someday." Camilla watched from a few feet away, arms folded, but this time not as a wall, as a boundary, one he would have to earn his way across. Julian looked at her over Lily's head. He didn't speak, but his eyes did. They said, "I see it now. I see all of it. I'm here." Camilla gave the smallest nod, and for the first time, maybe, just maybe, she believed him. There was no dramatic press release, no limo arrival, no sudden transformation. Julian Hart didn't try to buy his way into Lily's life. He just showed up. It started with the park. Every Saturday morning for 3 weeks, Julian appeared like clockwork at the entrance of Prospect Heights playground, coffee in hand, casual clothes replacing the armor of tailored suits. He never came empty-handed, but the gifts weren't grand. A puzzle shaped like planets, a second-hand copy of Charlotte's Web, a packet of sunflower seeds, because Lily had once mentioned she liked flowers that stood tall. Camilla watched from a shaded bench, arms crossed, heart conflicted. She had made it clear from the start, this isn't about you proving you're a father, it's about Lily feeling safe. Julian had nodded then, not arguing, not defending himself, just listening. Now every visit was a test he knew he couldn't study for. "Why don't you have crayons at your house?" Lily asked one morning as they sat cross-legged on a picnic blanket. Julian blinked. "Crayons. Yeah, every grown-up house has crayons. Or they're boring." He laughed genuinely. "I guess my house is pretty boring." She tilted her head. "You could fix that." He took the hint. By the following week he had filled an old briefcase with colored pencils, glitter glue, googly eyes, and a brand new sketch pad labeled Lily's Studio. Camilla raised an eyebrow when she saw it, amused in spite of herself. "Glitter glue." "Really?" Julian shrugged. "She said I was boring. She's not wrong." But there was a softness to her tone now, a slight upward curve at the edge of her mouth, one she didn't even realize was there. As the weeks passed, Julian's appearances became routine. He met them after school on Tuesdays and Fridays, standing quietly by the gate, letting Lily run to him if she chose to. Sometimes she did. Sometimes she just waved. He helped her with science fair prep, even though he barely remembered 5th grade astronomy. He sat through her full dance recital, recording every second with a phone he didn't touch otherwise. And one rainy afternoon when Camilla arrived late from work, she found Lily and Julian sitting in a laundromat across the street from their building, giggling over a spilled box of detergent and building soap castles out of suds. He wasn't flashy. He wasn't perfect, but he was trying. And Lily noticed. One night as Camilla tucked her in, Lily whispered, "Mommy, can I call him Dad?" Yet Camilla froze. Her throat tightened. "You can call him whatever you feel ready to," she said softly. He'll love it no matter what." Lily smiled, rolled over, and hugged her stuffed turtle tight. "Then maybe I'll tell him on Sunday." That Sunday, they visited the botanical garden. Lily ran ahead through rows of tulips, calling out colors, naming each flower like a discovery. Julian and Camilla walked behind, not speaking much, but not needing to. "You used to do this," she said finally, watching Lily from a distance. "Name things like they mattered more than they were." Julian smiled faintly. "You remembered that I remember everything." He looked over at her. "So do I." They stood in silence for a moment, the breeze dancing through Camilla's curls. Then Lily came running back, panting. "Dad." The word was loud, confident, unquestioned. Julian turned to her, stunned. She threw her arms around his waist. "You passed the trial." Camilla blinked. "What trial?" she asked, laughing. Lily grinned. "The daddy trial." Julian bent down, voice soft. "Did I?" She nodded. "You're not boring anymore." He laughed, deep and warm. Camilla wiped at her eye before either of them could notice. Later that night, Julian stood outside their apartment building, watching the windows glow in the dusky light. He didn't ask to be let in. Not yet. But before he left, Camilla came down with something in her hand, a folded paper. A drawing. This time not stick figures. A house. A man at the door. Inside, a mother, a child, and a place at the table waiting. "Lily drew this today," she said, handing it to him. "She said it's for you. For when you're ready." He took it gently, his throat thick. "And you," Camilla met his eyes. "I'm getting there." Julian hadn't expected fatherhood to look like sidewalk chalk and mismatched socks. But here he was on a Thursday afternoon, crouched in the middle of a Brooklyn courtyard, while Lily carefully instructed him on the anatomy of a unicorn. No, the horn has to spiral," she said, giggling. "Otherwise, it's just a pointy horse." Julian grinned and redrew the horn. "Ah, a crucial distinction." Camilla watched from the second-floor stairwell, leaning against the railing with a tired coffee in hand. She wasn't sure when she'd stopped expecting him to flake. Somewhere between the bookstore visit and the macaroni and cheese night. He hadn't just stayed. He adapted. He listened when Lily spoke, even when her stories tangled into wild dreams and jelly bean theories. He asked questions. He remembered her favorite colors. He made room. Camilla took a sip and tried not to let her heart soften. She failed a little. That weekend, he took them both to a small street fair near the museum. Not as a look-at-me gesture, but because Lily had never been on a carousel, and when she whispered it aloud in the middle of dinner, Julian had gone quiet. The next day, he was at their doorstep with tokens. Lily laughed the entire ride, clinging to the painted horse like it was flying. Camilla stood beside Julian, her hair tugged by wind, her eyes never leaving her daughter. "She looks like you when she smiles," Julian said, not looking at her. Camilla replied softly, "No, that's your smile. I've seen it before." It was a simple exchange, but it cracked something open. Julian wasn't just spending time with Lily anymore. He was also learning how to exist in Camilla's world. The modest rhythms of it, the scraped-together routines, the second-hand stories read aloud at night, the pot of lentils on the stove that doubled as dinner and lunch the next day. He came by one Friday with groceries, real ones, not the luxury brand kind. Apples, milk, pasta. Camilla stared at him as he set them down on the counter. "I Googled what 6-year-olds eat," he said with a shrug. "I figured glitter glue and dreams weren't sustainable." She laughed. Not usually. That evening he helped wash the dishes. They stood shoulder to shoulder in the cramped kitchen, their arms occasionally brushing. Camilla didn't pull away. One rainy night, Lily had a nightmare. Camilla found her crying, clutching her turtle plush, unable to fall back asleep. She texted Julian, not expecting a response. It was past midnight. But 3 minutes later, her phone buzzed. "Put me on speaker." She did. And Julian's voice, calm and low, came through the speaker. "Hey, Lily Pad. Want me to tell you the story of the sleeping sunflower again?" Camilla watched as Lily's eyes closed slowly, her breathing softening. She didn't wake again that night. Camilla lay awake afterwards, staring at the ceiling. Not because of fear, but because somewhere between sidewalk chalk and sunflower stories, Julian had begun rewriting the script. Not just showing up, but staying. And for the first time in years, that didn't scare her. It made her wonder. The knock on the penthouse door was sharp, precise, familiar in a way that made Julian's spine straighten before he even turned the handle. When he opened it, Margaret Hart stood in the marble foyer, a cashmere shawl draped around her shoulders and disdain already tightening her features. She didn't wait for an invitation. I heard she said, brushing past him into the living room as if she owned it. About the child. Julian closed the door behind her with more force than necessary. I assume you mean Lily, my daughter. Margaret froze mid-step. You're acknowledging this. There's nothing to deny, he said flatly, walking past her. She's mine. Margaret's heels clicked against the floor as she followed him. You've always been intelligent, Julian. But this is recklessness disguised as virtue. He turned slowly. I wasn't told. You made sure of that. Her chin lifted. I did what was necessary to protect your future. No, you did what was convenient for yours, he snapped. Margaret's mask cracked for half a second. That girl, Camilla, was a distraction. She was never one of us. And now she's dragged a child into it. To what leverage you manipulate you. She raised Lily on her own for 6 years, Julian said, his voice low. She never asked for a dime. She didn't even want me involved at first. Because she wanted control, Margaret countered. And now she'll use the child to guilt you into whatever fantasy she's conjured. Julian's hands curled into fists at his sides. You don't know her. I know her type. No, he said, stepping closer, eyes blazing. You know how to remove anyone who threatens your idea of power. But I'm not a child anymore, Mother, and I'm done letting you rewrite my life to fit your comfort. Margaret stared at him, something icy and imperious hardening in her face. You're making a mistake. Julian exhaled slowly, then said with perfect clarity, Then I'll finally be making one of my own. 2 days later, Camilla's apartment. Camilla was folding laundry when the knock came. Not Julian's knock. Sharper, louder. She opened the door and her stomach dropped. Margaret Hart. She was the same. Elegant, imposing, with eyes like cold steel. For a moment, Camilla felt herself transported back to that hallway outside Julian's college apartment where everything had begun to unravel. Mrs. Hart, she said, voice taut. You shouldn't be here. I'm not here to stay. I just thought it appropriate to speak face-to-face before the tabloids do. Camilla raised an eyebrow. How thoughtful. Margaret's lips tightened. I'm here to ask no, to strongly advise you to take what dignity you have left and walk away before this explodes in the press. We both know where this leads. I think you're mistaken, Camilla said, keeping her tone even. I'm not the one dragging this into the spotlight. I've kept quiet for 6 years. You've kept him distracted, Margaret hissed, and now you're infecting his judgment. You can't possibly believe a woman like you belongs in the Hart name. Camilla's hands were trembling, but she refused to let them show. I don't need to belong to your name, she said. I belong to my daughter. And if Julian wants to be in her life, that's between him and me, not you. Margaret's nostrils flared. You will regret this. No, Camilla said, stepping back. You will. Because for the first time he sees the truth. And you can't unmake that. With quiet force, she closed the door. And then for the first time in a long time, she locked it not out of fear, but out of choice. The next morning, Julian's office. Camilla waited in the hallway, her arms crossed as Lily skipped beside her, clutching a purple folder. Julian appeared through the glass doors, looking different, calmer, clearer. Ready? He asked. Camilla nodded, unsure what she was ready for, but she knew it was something real. Lily held up the folder proudly. My project. Julian knelt. Can I see it? She opened it. Construction paper hearts, a short essay, and a photo Camilla had taken at the park. The title read, My Family, the People Who Show Up. Julian's voice cracked. It's It's perfect. Camilla watched his hands, how carefully he held the folder, like it was sacred. And for the first time she felt her fear recede. Not disappear, but dissolve a little. Enough to say, "Do you want to walk us home?" Julian looked up. He smiled. "I'd love to." Camilla leaned against the closed door for a long moment after Margaret Hart left her pulse hammering beneath her skin like a drum. The hallway was silent. Still. But inside her, everything swirled. She had expected this, dreaded it even. She remembered that same cold voice from all those years ago, the way Margaret had stood outside Julian's college apartment like she was doing the world a favor, like her control was kindness, like Camilla's love had been some infection that needed to be removed. Now she was back, but Camilla wasn't the same girl anymore. This time she hadn't cried. This time she'd fought back. And yet, a part of her trembled, not with fear, but with fury, the kind born from years of fighting alone, from missed birthdays and late-night fevers, from holding her daughter close when the world felt like it had already decided she was unworthy. She wouldn't let that woman's voice live in Lily's ears. Not now. Not ever. She turned around. Lily was sitting on the living room floor with her sketch pad humming quietly as she colored a picture of sunflowers taller than houses. Her feet were bare, a sticker on her cheek, totally unaware of the confrontation that had just played out on the other side of the door. Camilla walked over, knelt beside her, and smoothed a hand through her curls. "Hey, Peanut." Lily looked up. "Yeah. Do you know how brave you are?" Lily grinned. "Because I climbed the monkey bars backwards yesterday." Camilla laughed. "Yes. And because you have the biggest heart I've ever known." Lily blinked, then leaned in to hug her mom's side, her head resting against her. Camilla held her tighter than usual. "Did something bad happen?" Lily mumbled into her shirt. Camilla's breath caught. "No. Just something that reminded me how lucky I am to have you." That was the truth. The rest would come later, piece by piece. Meanwhile, across the city, Julian stood in the center of his office, facing the long conference table that had once felt like a throne. The skyline glittered beyond the windows, but he didn't look at it. He was staring at a legal document. It was a new draft of his living will and trust plan, one that included Lily's name penciled in with a soft certainty that surprised even him. Angela entered quietly, holding a folder. "Your mother called again. 3 times. Julian didn't respond. Angela cleared her throat. "Do you want me to answer next time?" He looked at her. "No," he said. "You don't have to." Angela nodded. "Good, because I already blocked her." He blinked. "You what I've worked for you long enough to know when a storm's not worth outrunning," she said, placing the folder on his desk. "You've built an empire. Now maybe it's time to build something that matters." Julian stared at her and for once didn't argue. That night he wrote a letter. It wasn't formal. It wasn't strategic. It was simple. "Camilla, I never stood up for you when I should have. I let someone else's fear rewrite both our lives. I can't change that. But I'm here now. Not as Julian Hart, CEO, just as Lily's father. And if you'll let me, I want to stand beside you. Not above, not apart. Together." He sealed the envelope and slipped it into his coat. Tomorrow he would walk with them again. But this time he wasn't coming as a visitor. He was coming home. The knock never came. Saturday morning passed in silence. Camilla sat at the window, her hands wrapped around a cooling mug of tea. Across the street, the playground swing swayed in the breeze, empty. No Lily, no Julian. She had waited first with cautious hope, then with quiet disappointment. Now with something else. Something colder. Resignation. Lily had been dressed since 9 a.m., her sunflower dress fluttering each time she passed the window. She kept looking up from her coloring book and asking, "Is he here yet?" By noon, she had stopped asking. Camilla placed the untouched tea down and walked slowly into the living room where Lily was lying on the rug staring at the ceiling. Mommy Camilla knelt beside her. "Yeah." Lily didn't look at her. "Did I do something wrong?" The question cracked her chest open. No, baby, of course not. Then why didn't he come? Camilla smoothed Lily's hair back gently. Maybe something came up. Maybe. Her voice faltered. Maybe this is just what some people do. Lily didn't reply. She didn't cry. But the silence was worse. Camilla packed slowly that night. Not with urgency, but with finality. Just the essentials. Clothes, sketchbooks, a few framed photos. A shoebox of Lily's favorite crayons. Her late grandmother's rosary. The sunflower seed packet Julian had given Lily. She left behind most of the rest. This wasn't a running away. It was a retreat. A return. Home to Oregon. To her mother's house. To something small and steady where she could breathe again. Where Lily could grow without shadows. She scribbled a note on the back of a grocery list and taped it to the inside of the door. Thank you for trying. But I won't let her wait for someone who doesn't come. They left at dawn. Camilla didn't look back. That afternoon, Julian's arrival. The flowers were fresh. Yellow tulips, Lily's favorite. Julian stood outside the apartment door, adjusting the collar of his coat, a small envelope in his hand. Inside it, the letter he'd written the night before. The one he'd rewritten 3 times. He knocked. No answer. He waited. Knocked again. Camilla, nothing. He pressed his ear to the door. Stillness. He checked the time. 2:14 p.m. He was 4 hours late. He cursed under his breath and pulled out his phone. No messages. No missed calls. Panic prickled up his neck. Then he noticed the light sheet of paper taped just inside the door. He squinted through the peephole's edge until he could read the handwriting. Camilla's handwriting. He read the note once. Then again. I won't let her wait for someone who doesn't come. His stomach dropped. God, he whispered. He stumbled back from the door, running a hand through his hair. No, no, no. He pulled out his phone and dialed her number. Voicemail. Again. Voicemail. Camilla, please. I'm sorry. I should have been here. Something happened with my mother. Please just call me. Tell me where you are. I'll come. I'll fix this. The words felt useless as they left his mouth. He sank down on the steps outside her building and buried his head in his hands. Later that evening, Rosa Delgado's apartment. Julian stood in the hallway outside Rosa's door, heart pounding. Rosa, Camilla's neighbor, the kind woman who always smiled at Lily in the hallways, opened it with a confused frown. She's gone, isn't she? Julian asked. Rosa hesitated, then nodded slowly. She said she needed peace, that she was tired of holding her breath. Julian's throat tightened. Did she say where she went? Rosa looked at him carefully. Why should I tell you? He swallowed. Because I wasn't late by choice. I had to deal with someone who spent her whole life trying to keep me away from them. But I'm not letting it happen again. Not now. Rosa studied him, then sighed. She said she was going back home. To Oregon. Her mother's in a town called Elkwood. 1 stoplight and a diner with terrible coffee. Julian's shoulders sagged. Thank you. She left with a little girl who had the brightest eyes I've ever seen, Rosa added. Don't break that kid's heart again. I won't, Julian said. I swear. That night. On the road. Julian drove through the dark in a rented SUV, Camilla's note still clutched in the cup holder. He whispered her name like a vow, like a promise he was finally ready to keep. No press, no pretense, just a father, and a man who finally understood that some things, the right things, don't wait forever, but they're worth chasing anyway. The road out of Brooklyn was slick with rain. Camilla gripped the steering wheel tighter as they crossed the bridge, her eyes scanning the skyline for the last time. Lily was asleep in the back seat, one hand still clutching her sketch pad, her other curled around the sunflower tin. The silence in the car was deafening. Camilla's mind kept replaying that morning. The dress Lily had picked out. The window she'd waited at. The crayon drawing she had folded carefully and tucked into her pocket just in case. Camilla had spent years telling herself not to hope, but Julian had made it hard not to. He'd shown up. He'd tried. He'd made Lily laugh and called her Lily Pad and sat through an entire puppet show without once checking his watch. He'd shown up again and again, until he didn't. Camilla blinked hard and turned onto the interstate. She wasn't running. She was protecting. That's what she told herself. And yet every mile she put between them, a part of her ached. Back in Brooklyn, Julian stood alone in Lily's now empty room. Rosa had let him in. 15 minutes, she warned. That's all. The air still smelled like crayons and cinnamon. Her bed sheets were patterned with stars. A plush turtle sat at the corner of the pillow, like it was waiting to be hugged again. On the wall were her drawings, one labeled Me and Mommy Another, labeled Our Dream House, and one pinned to the mirror, folded. He reached for it slowly. Inside was a note in a child's handwriting. For when you come next time. Lily. The page wobbled in his hand. He sat on the bed and felt something in him crack, not loudly, quietly, devastatingly. He had failed them once, unknowingly. Now he had failed them again by showing up 4 hours late and assuming time was something he had the right to waste. Angela had told him Margaret showed up at Camila's door. He should have predicted it, should have known better, should have left the meeting the moment it began to spin into another power play. But he hadn't, because a small, prideful part of him had still been Julian Hart's CEO. Problem solver, power broker. He wasn't supposed to be Julian Hart, the desperate father. Not until now. Now there was no negotiation, no second bid. There was only the road and a hope he could still catch them before they crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. That night, somewhere along I-80, Camilla pulled into a motel outside Pittsburgh. She didn't plan to stop, but the storm had grown too heavy and Lily was starting to stir in the back seat. She carried her daughter inside, tucked her into the motel bed, and sat beside her in the dark. Lily opened one eye. Are we there yet? Not yet, Camilla whispered. Just resting. Lily nodded. Will he know where we went? Camilla hesitated. Maybe. Will he come? Camilla brushed a curl from her forehead. I don't know, baby. But in her chest, her heart gave a tiny, reluctant whisper. I hope so. That same moment, a gas station in Ohio. Julian stood in the glow of the overhead lights, a map unfolded on his dashboard. His GPS had no idea where Elkwood was. It barely registered as more than a dot. But he remembered what Rosa said. One stoplight and a diner with terrible coffee. It was enough. He put the car into gear and drove toward the hope that hadn't burned out yet. Elkwood, Oregon. A quiet town where time slowed and headlights moved like ghosts across sleepy roads. It was early evening when the storm returned, soft at first, then heavy, persistent, steady like breath. Raindrops whispered against the tin roof of Evelyn Ross's farmhouse nestled on a gentle hill just beyond the tree line. Wind stirred the old wind chimes into a melancholy tune. Inside, Camilla stood in the kitchen peeling apples for pie she wasn't sure she'd finish. Lily sat at the table, coloring in silence. There was less humming now, less skipping. The past few days had left behind a quietness that Camilla hadn't expected from her usually radiant child. She's different, Evelyn said gently from behind, wiping her hands on a towel. Since you got here. Camilla didn't answer. She couldn't. The silence was easier than saying what she feared, that her daughter had learned disappointment too young. That hope had become a risk. Maybe that means she's growing, Evelyn added, watching Camilla's hands still on the apple. Maybe it means she's learning not to trust, Camilla whispered. Meanwhile, Julian stood in the rain just beyond the gate of the farmhouse. He hadn't meant to get out of the car yet. He'd planned to wait until morning, to gather his thoughts, to prepare a speech. But then he saw the swing, old wooden, suspended from a maple tree beside the porch. And on the porch, through the curtain-framed window, he saw her. Camilla. In a sweater and slippers, her head bowed over a bowl, her daughter behind her with markers spread like petals on the table. Julian gripped the gate. His heart thundered. He didn't belong in this picture, but he wanted to, so he stepped forward. Each step across the gravel felt like a prayer, a plea, a promise. And then he reached the door. He raised his hand to knock. The door opened before he touched it. Camilla stood in the threshold, frozen. Her eyes widened, her breath caught. Rain streamed down Julian's face, plastering his hair to his forehead. He looked like a man broken open by time. "I didn't know if I'd find you," he said, breathless. Camilla didn't move. "I thought I lost you both. Again." The words hit her like wind. She stepped onto the porch but didn't speak. Julian reached into his coat and pulled out a folded, weather-stained page, Lily's drawing, the one that said, "My family, the people who show up." "I wasn't there. I failed you," he said. "Not just last week. Years ago." Camilla's voice cracked. "You didn't even know. I should have found out. I should have looked harder. I should have fought harder for you." Silence. The only sound was the rain tapping the porch roof like a heartbeat. Then a small voice called from inside. Mommy Lily appeared in the doorway, her eyes going wide when she saw him. Julian dropped to his knees. He didn't speak. He just opened his arms. Lily looked up at Camilla. Camilla nodded barely. And Lily ran. She barreled into him with a laugh that sounded like light breaking through clouds. "You came." Julian held her tight arms, trembling. "I'll always come. I promise." Camilla turned her face to the side and wiped away a tear. He looked up at her. "And you?" he asked softly. "Will you let me try, not just to be a father, but to be the man who stays?" Camilla stood still for a long time. Then she stepped off the porch into the rain. She stood in front of him, water soaking through her sweater, her hands shaking. "You don't get to promise and disappear again." "I won't," he said. "Not for anything." Her eyes searched his, desperate to believe him, terrified too. "Then stay," she whispered. "But stay for her. Not for guilt, not for redemption. Stay because she deserves someone who doesn't leave when it's hard." "I'm not going anywhere," Julian said. "Not anymore." He looked down at Lily. "Right." Lily beamed. "Forever and ever and ever." Camilla exhaled, and this time she believed him. Julian barely noticed the rain soaking through his coat anymore. All he could feel was the weight of Lily in his arms, light and real and miraculous. She held him like she never wanted to let go. "Did you bring my picture?" she asked suddenly, her voice muffled against his shoulder. He smiled, his chest tight. "I brought everyone." She leaned back, looking up at him with wide, earnest eyes. "Even the one with the crooked house, that one's my favorite," he said. Lily giggled. "Mine too." Camilla stood nearby watching. The porch light haloed her like a ghost from his memory, like the girl from years ago who once pressed her cheek to his chest in the rain and whispered her dreams between kisses and deadlines. But she wasn't a girl now. She was a mother, a fighter, a woman who had carried a daughter and a secret for 6 years and bore them both with grace. Julian gently placed Lily back on the porch steps and stood. He turned toward Camilla, uncertain if he was allowed to take even one more step. She surprised him. She moved first. Slowly, cautiously, she stepped forward until they stood eye to eye in the rain. Her sweater was damp, her hair curling slightly at the edges, her lips pressed into a line that trembled with unsaid things. Julian opened his mouth, but she raised a hand. "I need to say this first." He closed his mouth. Camilla swallowed. "I have spent years trying not to resent you, not to hate you for what happened, because hate is heavy. And Lily deserved better than a mother who carried hate." Julian's throat bobbed. "I told myself it wasn't your fault, that you didn't know. And I believe that." She paused. "But that didn't make it easier." Her voice cracked. "I named her alone. I watched her take her first steps alone. I held her hand at every appointment, every scraped knee, every night she cried because she didn't know who her daddy was." Tears gathered in Julian's eyes. "Camilla, I'm not telling you this to punish you," she whispered. "I'm telling you so you understand what it cost to survive without you." A beat of silence passed. Then she added softer, "And so you understand what it means when I say I'm still standing here." He exhaled, his chest heaving with emotion. "I see you," he said. "I see what you've carried. And if you let me, I'll carry it with you now. Not out of guilt, out of love." Camilla looked away, blinking fast. Her hands fidgeted, then fell still. Julian reached into his pocket and pulled out something small, a silver key on a sunflower-shaped keychain. "I bought a place here," he said. "A few blocks down. It's empty, but I'd like to fill it with color, with books, with crayons, with her laughter, with you." Camilla looked down at the key, then up at him, and after a long moment she whispered, "Let's start with Sundays." Julian smiled. "Deal." Behind them, Lily clapped. "You guys are being very dramatic," she said cheerfully. "But I like it." Camilla laughed through her tears, and Julian's heart broke open in the best way. The rain kept falling, but for once no one was running from it. 6 months later, Elkwood, Oregon. The spring breeze rustled through rows of wildflowers on the hillside, carrying the scent of earth and something sweeter. Baking bread from the town's only diner, the faint hum of guitar strings from a porch nearby, and the laughter of a child who no longer asked if her father would come, because now he was already there. The ceremony was small, just the way Camilla wanted it. A clearing beneath the oak tree behind her mother's house, rows of mismatched chairs borrowed from neighbors, a trellis draped with white linen and sunflowers, Lily's idea naturally. She stood proudly in her flower girl dress, clutching a basket filled with yellow petals she'd picked herself that morning. Julian waited beneath the tree, shifting slightly in his linen shirt and navy blazer. No tie. Camilla had insisted. "I want you to look like you," she'd told him, smoothing his collar with a smile, not like a headline. And now, as he saw her approach barefoot in the grass, her dress simple but radiant, her eyes never leaving his, Julian knew he would never again question who he was supposed to be. She was his truth, and Lily was his legacy. This was his life. Camilla reached the top of the aisle, heart thudding beneath her ribs. She looked at Julian not like he was the man who had once left, but the man who had chosen to return. He took her hand. "You came," she whispered. Every day he whispered back, "I'll keep coming." They didn't exchange elaborate vows, just a single promise each. "Camilla, I choose you. Not because I need you, but because I believe in us. Julian, I will never stop showing up. For you, for her, for this." Lily clapped before the officiant even finished. "You may kiss the bride," she cried out with a grin. They laughed and did just that. That evening, the three of them sat on a picnic blanket outside the house. Julian's jacket was folded under Lily's head as she lay between them, tracing constellations with her finger. "See that one?" she said, pointing upward. "That's the family star." Camilla tilted her head. "Is that an official constellation?" Lily grinned. "It is now." Julian leaned back on his elbows, the warmth of Camilla's shoulder pressed against his. "I didn't know I could feel this full," he said. Camilla looked at him, then at Lily, who had begun to hum softly as she stared at the sky. "You're not full," Camilla said. "You're home." Inside the house, on the fridge was a new drawing. 3 people, 1 tall, 1 medium, 1 small. They were standing beneath a sun, holding hands in front of a crooked little house with a mailbox labeled Hart Ross. Above them, in bright crayon letters, Lily had written, "My forever family. The end." Sometimes the people who leave aren't gone forever, they're just finding their way home. This is a story about second chances, the quiet strength of a mother and a little girl whose love stitched a family back together. If this touched your heart, we'd love to hear where you're watching. From your comments mean the world to us. Let us know below. Where in the world are you watching from? And if you believe in stories of redemption, love, and the power of showing up, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next. Thanks for being here. See you in the next story.